You know, some people say that Odoo business management software is like fertilizer, the way it promotes growth and all. But other people say Odoo is like a magic beanstalk because it grows with your company and is also magically affordable. And there's some people who would even say Odoo's individual software programs come together to build the perfect suite like building blocks. Well, Odoo is all of these things. Fertilizer, magic beanstalk, building blocks for business. So sign up now at odoo.com, ODOO.com.
Hey, it's Bobby Bones with some exciting news. Open booking is here for the Top Shelf Country Cruise, setting sail February 2026 aboard the luxurious Celebrity Reflection. Spots are filling up fast, so book your stateroom today or sign up to become a lineup insider to receive the final lineup 48 hours prior to the public. Don't miss your chance to make February 2026 unforgettable. Visit TopShelfCountryCruise.com. That's TopShelfCountryCruise.com.
Well, of course it's your body. I get that. You can send those pictures to whoever you want, but those are my coworkers that you did most recently. You know what, Mom? I gotta go. I have work. Just please don't send any more until we talk about it, specifically to my coworkers. Well, then don't send any more after tonight. Just no more after tonight. You know what? Never mind.
Finally!
Oh, man.
Man, it took you long enough. Come on, man.
Jesus.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late. Did I miss something?
Yeah, so you know how I'm always trying to help our podcast?
Yeah, you killed us so many times, man. Come on.
I mean, almost.
Would we say help?
You made me say clip clop.
Like a bunch.
Anyways,
pockets work.
Since the topic of this week's essay is Tetris, I thought what better way to set things up than human Tetris?
Yeah, and it was actually going pretty good. Though I'm still not sure I like being the square.
Really, Tom? You're not the square? You're not this. Who's the square if not you, Tom?
Anyway, we've been sitting here for fucking hours like this waiting for you, our long piece.
Oh, me, right, yeah, because tall. Awesome.
Because tall, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because
Bing,
tall.
bing,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
All right. You guys ready to record?
Yeah, give me a second. I just need to stretch my legs, man. Oh, I still don't know why I'm the L. I don't get why I'm the letter L.
Because Noah and I were left Z. I'm not
Okay,
having
Just
just
for
no.
the record, I have many qualities that aren't tall. Just so many different aspects to me.
Well, of course you do, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Nobody said you didn't.
Okay, good.
Yeah, for instance, we get those naked pictures from your mom. Those are great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Love those.
Talk to her about that.
Hello and welcome to Citation Needed, the podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts. Because this is the internet, and that's how it works now. I'm Eli Bosnick, and I'll be perfectly aligning the pieces of this story. But I'll need some blockheads. First up, two men old enough to remember when today's subject was cutting-edge video game technology, Cecil and Noah.
I remember when they made the pong ball into 4 dots, and one was just a little darker to make it round. It made it look round. It's amazing. Amazing.
Oh, well, cathode ray tubes making high definition irrelevant since 1927.
Preach, brother. Preach.
And also joining us tonight, two men who refuse to play because building a wall is way too much like work.
Okay.
Tom
Bricks
and
are fucking
Heath.
heavy. I'm not doing
Yeah.
that without a serious paycheck.
We're
Union.
just typical lazy Irish people. Yoity-toity-toity-toity. Great.
Keith, come on, man.
Dude.
Wow, the Irish are a proud people,
Eli,
man.
was it last episode? It was a thing. A couple weeks ago. It's the what about
wow.
Dude,
Dude,
we're
racist.
talking about
satire?
Tetris.
So
I have no
racist.
idea what you're talking
That's
about.
sweet. We were. It's a whole thing. This is a set. I hate you guys.
Super racist.
Sorry. Anyways, Tom, did you have a wall-based joke for us?
Not anymore, I don't.
Okay. Heath ruined it. Before we begin tonight, I'd like to thank our patrons. If the free podcast flowing into your ear tubes is the perfectly aligned stack, our patrons' money is the long piece that satisfyingly makes it all come together. And if you'd like to learn how to join their ranks, be sure to stick around till the end of the show. And with that out of the way, tell us, Tom, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event will we be talking about today?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Tetris so that fucking music gets lodged in your goddamn head for 3 weeks, too. So that's great. Yeah, there it is. There it is. And it never goes away. That's it.
There's some good emo versions of that too.
And Noah, this one's been spinning around in your head for a while. Are you ready to clear things up for us?
Oh, God, I made the bad puns too easy on him. Oh, no.
Also, related question, are you doing an essay about video games just to piss Tom off?
Yes, he is.
Good question and good guess. Well, so I wanted to do something that happened on today's date in history. But when I looked that up, the only thing that I found that I felt like I could milk an essay out of was Fatty Arbuckle's birthday. And so instead, I decided I'd play some Tetris while I thought about it, and then I didn't come up with anything, and here we are.
All right, so tell us, Noah, what is Tetris?
Don't say it like that.
Well,
we need to stop. We need to stop. You absolutely cannot say it like that for the rest of the time.
Well, now he's gone.
That is locked in.
Please. No,
God damn it. So
you're off the show.
So the S is silent. No, so Tetris is almost certainly the most popular video game of all time. Now, it's actually hard to pin that down with exact numbers, especially since free-to-play mobile apps and marketing bullshit convolute the hell out of the most players ever lists. Suffice to say that 2 different versions of Tetris show up in the top 10 best-selling video games of all time list. And there are at least 26 versions of Tetris. I'm not counting sequels and spin-offs when I say that. Like 26 versions of the original one that have been sold. The game is so addictive that if you make the mistake of trying to sleep at some point after having played it, you'll see little Tetris pieces falling in your unconscious mind. And while Tetris isn't the only activity that can do that to a person, the fact that psychologists call that the Tetris effect clues you in on how common it is.
My sexual style was actually described as losing at Tetris several times.
Also,
it's funny you mentioned that phenomenon because I actually have that, except instead of Tetris, it's every time I ever said or did anything embarrassing. So
right,
that's
exactly. Right. Mm-hmm. All right. So now, obviously, the story of Tetris begins in Russia, or as it was known then, the United Soviet Socialist Republic.
100% of this essay must be read in that voice.
No, sorry.
That's locked in.
Patreon goal, right? So, all right. So
100% of your life has to be read in that voice.
All right, so the year is 1984. Now, that's 1962 in Soviet years. Okay? Everything those motherfuckers had at the time was decades out of date. And as omnipresent as that fact no doubt was for anybody that lived there, it was particularly noticeable if you were a computer programmer, like Alexei Pajitnov. So Pajitnov worked in the artificial intelligence department for the Dorodnitsyn Computing Center at the Soviet Academy of Sciences, and his primary focus was on speech recognition. Now, as anybody who's ever used Alexa or Siri or something like that knows, even 37 years later, we're still just dipping our toes into the water on that stuff. So needless to say, a guy in 1984 working on wildly outdated equipment wasn't making a lot of headway.
The Russian Amazon Alexei called the KGB every time you added blue jeans to your shopping list.
All right, so one day they wheel in this new computer called an Electronica 60. It's essentially the equivalent of a PDP-11, which was a state-of-the-art mini computer in 1970.
The little numbers are so sad, like 60 and 11. Like use hundreds
right,
at
yeah,
least.
exactly.
How many is a mini computer in 1970? Did it fit like in one room? Is that what made it mini?
Yeah, it's like the Tsar Bomba of a computer. It's like that big.
So like mini computer at that time in 1970 anyway meant like the size of a fridge. Right,
but we put the handle on it. We can use.
You just tuck it under your arm and go to the coffee shop, you know?
Yeah, right. Well, Xbox is bringing that back, actually. I don't know if you know.
The Russians invented kettlebell training just to move their computers around.
Right. Yeah. So for this huge fucking thing, it's got 4 kilobytes of
Holy
RAM.
fuck.
It has no graphic capacity whatsoever, and it topped out at about 250,000 operations per second. So, for contrast, the most popular home computer at the time in the U.S. was the Commodore 64, which had 16 times as much RAM and twice the processing speed, and you could get it for under $500. Like, this, no shit, 8-year-old Noah literally had more computing power than the Soviet Academy of Sciences at the time.
And we were more afraid of 8-year-old Noah than we were the USSR even in 1984.
Noah was actually the kid from War Games. That was him.
All right, so they wheel in this binary dinosaur and task Alexei with testing its capacity. So naturally, he sets about programming a video game.
Boss, this is just abacus and handful of sand. You gave me this computer. The game's going to be just squares but it's just really just squares. It's just gonna be squares. That's it.
Yeah, right. Like, honestly, squares might have been a little much for this motherfucker. Because, like, look, this computer doesn't do graphics. Right? So when you have a computer that doesn't have graphics, your game potential is super thin. So Alexei decided to build this game around very simple shapes. Now, his first thought was that of a pentamino puzzle that he had loved as a kid.
Pentamino.
Well, there's some disagreement on that.
You say it, pentamino.
but nobody says tetramino. So yeah,
They should.
Petrimino.
A pentamino, fine, is any shape made of 5 equal-sized squares that's connected edge to edge. There are a total of 12 potential shapes, or 18 if you count mirrored shapes as different ones. And as with their less diverse cousin dominoes, there are a number of games that you can play with those shapes.
I believe it's pronounced Dominos.
Well, it depends on who you ask. So Alexei set about programming a game where you had to fill an 8x8 grid by rotating and placing pentaminos or pentaminoes.
This whole like build a game thing maybe wasn't what Russia had in mind when they gave him their only working computer. Alexei is going to do it. Soon we'll have the answer to global domination of the capitalist swine in America.
Yes, comrade, he is genius. Soon he will have programmed the program so devious, so cunning. The lights in America will go dark forever and the USSR will rule the earth.
To Mother Russia!
To Mother Russia!
Okay, let's check on him.
Alexei!
Yes?
What have you come up with? A computer virus that make real virus?
Yeah, or a worm which will work its way into the American military mainframe and then launch missiles at their own cities.
Hey, that's very good. I like that.
Yeah, I know, right? Thought of all night.
Oh, so Alexei, what you make?
Alexei!
Well, it like dominoes?
Dominos?
It's not actually as good as dominoes.
All right, so ultimately, that original game had a couple of problems. Most notably, it was fucking boring. But while he was fucking around with that, there was something that he found very addictive about filling in the squares. So he felt like there was a good game down there somewhere if he kept digging. So he simplified it. He downshifted from pentaminos to tetraminos. See, now it sounds weird. Which
Tetramino.
Tetraminos, okay.
I have no idea what we're talking about. I'm completely lost.
See? No, but that meant he only had 7 shapes to work with instead of 18. Then he fidgeted with the rules in the playboard for a while until he came up with a crazy addictive game. And he christened that game Tetris, a combination of the prefix tetra for 4 and the game tennis. So,
What?
No, that word does not mean anything in Russian.
Tennis in Soviet Russia was kind of a weird game. Just like strange.
All right, so now keep in mind that the computer he was using had no graphic capabilities. He couldn't even do squares, right? So he couldn't create the shapes at all. He had to represent the squares of the pieces with hashtags. So the original Tetris has a very ASCII art look to it. But regardless, it was crazy fun, and pretty soon everybody at the Academy was stealing away a few minutes here and there to fuck around with Alexei's new game.
His boss is like, I was going to ship you off to Siberia for wasting company time, but this is great. This is really fun.
Now, so if you or I came up with a game that people couldn't stop fucking playing, our first thought would probably be how to sell the thing. Right. But Alexei was living in a communist country, working for the government. Right. He didn't own the game at all. He couldn't profit from it. So instead, he just copied it and passed it along to pretty much every place in Moscow that had an Electronica 60, which was like 8 fucking places. So to help spread the game around a bit, he enlisted the help of a 16-year-old whiz kid programmer named Vadim Gerasimov, who translated the game to IBM PC. Because while officially there were 0 of those in the USSR, in reality, it was a relatively common black market item.
Okay, just hand it off real smooth when I give you the... Ow! What the fuck? Seriously? That's so big.
All right, so pretty soon the game was spreading like a fire. So a friend of Alexei's named Vladimir Pokyolko saw the game, he realized that it could have enormous value in academic research, believe it or not. He was a clinical psychologist who specialized in human-computer interactions, and he spread the game around by using it to study learning and addiction and a host of other subjects. He was so instrumental in spreading the game around, actually, that many sources list him as the co-creator. After the fall of the USSR, he would start his own software company, make a bunch of money, lose a bunch more than he made, and then stab his wife and his child to death in a horrific murder-suicide.
Jeez.
Yeah, sorry to add that detail, but you got to spice up the Tetris essay where you can.
He's just turning a square knife around and around. Okay, it's symmetrical.
He stabs her perfectly and she disappears. Just pops.
By 1986, Tetris managed to slip past the Iron Curtain, and that's when a dude named Robert Stein first saw it. So Stein is an international salesman for a London-based software company, and as soon as he saw the game, he knew he was looking at a mega hit. He wasn't a big video game guy himself, but he played Tetris all the 3 times, and he was addicted. So he talks to Novo Trade, which is the company that's distributing it in Hungary, about securing the UK rights for it, and he gets basically the worst news he can get. The game came out of the economic black hole of the USSR. Okay, so basically at this time, nothing was exported from the Soviet Union. At least not outside the Soviet bloc. I mean, their consumer goods were all shit and nobody wanted them, but even the stuff they were good at didn't make it out. Nobody was watching Russian movies or listening to Russian music or reading Russian novels or not anything that was made after 1945 anyway.
Hey, come on, Lolita was amazing. Thank you. Okay.
But the thing is that it's not because they sucked at the arts. It was because it was essentially impossible to license commercial properties from a country with no intellectual property law. Right, so the idea of trying to license software from a Russian programmer was a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, Russian programming had like an extra 1,000 pages of extraneous code and more characters you care to remember anyway. So,
yeah, see, that's because Russian lit is a lot like Tetris. It's tedious, repetitive, and you know there's a way to get to the end, but god damned if you've ever got it.
Right, it's not.
I was promised this code was going to jump under a train. I'm living for it to jump under a train.
All right, so Stein does a bit of research. He finds out that the game was made at the Academy of Sciences, so he contacts them. He gets nothing from them, so then he contacts Alexei Pajitnov directly. Now, Alexei had spoken to his superiors about licensing the game outside of the country, and they had been receptive to that idea. So when this British guy reaches out to him, all he knows is that, yes, Robert Stein has discussed this with the Academy, and yes, he wants to sell Tetris outside the USSR. So he gets a friend who speaks a little bit of English to fax a reply to Stein saying that, yes, he is definitely interested in licensing the game. Now, the rest of this story all hinges on the intent of that fax. It's in broken English, so piecing together the intent is a bit tough to begin with, but Stein reads it and he interprets that as a go-ahead to start shopping the rights around for this game to different software companies. Alexei says his intent is just to tell Stein that he's interested, not to empower him to sell any rights. And since there's going to be tens of millions of dollars at stake the first time that dispute bubbles to the surface, who the hell knows what anybody honestly meant or thought at any point? The end result, though, is that Stein thinks he has the rights to sell Tetris, but what he really has is an RSVP.
See, this is why we need heroes like Thomas Edison. None of this fucking around with permission stuff. Just, oh, that looks cool. Bam, light bulb. Bing, instant power.
There you go. All right, so in 1987, Stein takes his phantom rights to the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. That would be the biggest trade show in the video game industry until E3 started in 1995. And while a lot of companies were scared away by the game's Soviet origins, he did manage to sell the European rights to a company called Mirrorsoft and the American rights to Spectrum Holobyte. And then it gets complicated. Spectrum Holobyte somehow gets the impression that they have the Japanese rights, which they then sell to a dude named Hank Rogers, who works for Bulletproof Software. Mirrorsoft also thinks it has the Japanese rights, so they sell them to Tengen, which is a subsidiary of Atari, and then Tengen sells the Japanese arcade rights to Sega.
Oh my God, what is even happening right now?
Well, so at this point, basically every company in the video game industry except Nintendo thinks they own the rights to Tetris. And then Nintendo bought the rights to Tetris.
When they finally come out with the cover for the new Tetris, it's just a series of Spider-Man cartoons pointing at each other. Just that.
All right. Well, quick before Nintendo turns the Z-Piece into a beloved character with a franchise and PlayStation turns it into a gritty man with a dead wife, I need a quick break for a little something we like to call apropos of nothing.
if he's coming.
I mean, he said he was.
Oh, what's this? Room for me to slot in.
Square!
Square, you made it.
LPs, T-Block. How the hell are you guys? Been years.
Tell me about it. You look great, man.
No, I don't. I mean, you just add a square or two. Am I right?
Yeah,
Totally.
Tell me about it, yeah.
By the way, L, sorry to hear about you and, other L's divorce. Rough.
Thanks.
Hey, you guys are such a perfect fit, though.
I know. I think at a certain point we were just too similar.
Sure, yeah.
Hey, fellas.
Oh, C-Piece. You made it.
Of course I did. You think I'd miss the big Tetraminos reunion, did you?
We're glad you're here.
You know, this is so funny. I actually didn't get invited. Like, I think my invitation got lost in the mail, but when I saw Opie's here post about it on Facebook, I had the weekend free, so I came.
Yeah, you can just call me Square. See, everybody calls me Square.
But your official title is Opie's.
Yeah, right. It's just, I'm very clearly a square. You can see the squareness.
Whatever you say, Big O, whatever you say. And look what I brought.
Organic chickpea puffs?
Mm-hmm. I know I've been telling you guys to go veg for a while. Trust me, these taste just like Cheetos.
Oh, I couldn't.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm fine.
No, thank you.
Come on, trust me.
Don't put that in my mouth. Oh, they're so dry.
Right? So good.
What is aftertaste?
Oh, that's the chickpea.
I gotta get a beer. A lot of beers.
Okay, but don't be too long, Big O. I brought a very complex World War II themed board game that I have played and you guys haven't. But don't expect me to go easy on you.
Oh, cool.
Another board game.
Excuse me, did somebody order shots?
Long peas!
Dude, you made it!
What's up?
Awesome,
What up,
dude.
boys? You knew I wouldn't miss this shit. All right, so you fuckers drink these. First round's on me.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to get round 2 also on me. And then we can take turns doing donuts in my brand new Ferrari. I have a Ferrari.
You man, long peas!
Right?
Peas!
Oh, man.
And then we'll play my board game that I brought. It only takes 10 minets to set up and 20 to teach.
We'll see whether or not it takes us. We have time for that.
Oh, okay.
Now let's get crunk.
I can't do it.
Oh.
Late.
Yeah, it's not the same either. It sounded weird.
And we're back. But only because the other plebeians on this podcast didn't trust you, our audience, with a full remake of The Iceman Cometh using the Tetris pieces. Whatever, but appreciated in my time. Know what happened next in the essay.
What pieces?
So-
Eli, what pieces?
Tetramino.
All right, so the next chapter of this story revolves around a dude named Henk Rogers.
Yeah, of course
So
it
Henk
does.
is a Dutch entrepreneur and environmental activist that broke into the video game industry by introducing role-playing games to the Japanese market.
How
Very
does that
profitable.
sentence make sense to you? Hank is a Dutch guy selling shit to the Japanese.
Yeah, he's quite the international dude.
What?
I fucking love. I honestly almost just did a whole essay on Hank
That
Rogers.
is the first sentence you've ever written. I know every word, but you put them in that order. I don't know what happened.
All right, so now Hank was also one of the few non-Japanese people who managed to wrangle a software development license out of Nintendo in the mid-'80s. And like pretty much everybody who ever saw Tetris, he got addicted. But unlike anybody who had seen it to that point, he was super buddy-buddy with Hiroshi Yamauchi, the president of Nintendo, and Minoru Arakawa, Hiroshi's son-in-law and president of Nintendo of America, which means that he's already seen the yin to Tetris's yang. See, by 1987, Nintendo was hard at work developing what would become their best-selling console to that point and remains the third best-selling console of all time, the Game Boy. affectionately known as the Brick, the original Game Boy, was an underpowered system even by the standards of the day. Other handhelds had way more pixels, backlit screens, color graphics, and they used 26 AA batteries and lasted for 14 minutes. But the Game Boy's 15-hour battery life and phenomenal game selection would ultimately propel it to over 100 million sales.
Some kid trying to power his off-brand handheld with a length of cable, a clock tower, and a lightning bolt.
Also, you remember the Atari Lynx.
Yeah.
Hey, Barry Allen, run around in circles for me. I got to fire up my Game Boy. Doc, I need to tell you something about the Dreamcast.
All right, but as of 1987, the Game Boy is still just an ugly-ass brick of plastic with a screen that offered up 4 shades of baby shit green. Okay? To sell the motherfucker, Nintendo was going to need their killer app, and Hank Rogers knew that he just found it. What's more, he was reasonably sure that nobody had bothered to sew up the handheld rights to the game. So he figured there was probably some wiggle room for him to get in on this deal.
Okay, imagine if the rights for everything were this minutely subdivided.
Right.
Okay, so I see you do have the land rights to the property. Fine. But I'm afraid you didn't buy the window or door rights. So it's in or out, not both. In or out.
You don't even have the sky rights, actually.
Why didn't they make a foothold system to fuck with all these contracts?
All right, so now at the same time, Robert Stein is sitting in the middle of his tangled web of subleased Japanese arcade rights and shit, and still all he's got to back up his claim to the game is a fax that says, yeah, man, see what you can do. So he is desperately trying to get a signed contract with the Russians that cements his end of this deal. And at the same time, Russia is all the way glasnost, right? So they're trying to reform their country. They're dipping their toes into the waters of capitalism. And that means that suddenly Stein is dealing with 24 different people who just did the 1980s equivalent of Googling how to negotiate video game rights. All of them determined to get the best possible deal for the motherland.
Oh, okay. I know you read something about like making me talk first in some negotiation manual, but now you have to say something now. Like I've talked now. This is nothing. Nothing's happening. You have to talk. Yet. Okay.
Exactly, actually. So but by this time, the Russians are pissed at Stein. They can see that the game is doing well on 3 continents, and they're still not seeing any money. Now, this is actually a fairly natural thing in deals like this. The money has to be fed up through this huge chain of 6 subsidiaries before Stein's ever going to see any of it, and then he's got to pass it along to them. But if there's one thing that everybody who doesn't know what the fuck they're doing in a business deal has in common, it is the unshakable certainty that they're getting ripped off. So the Russians are hesitant to sign anything at all with Stein until he proves that he can actually show them the money.
Okay, here's a picture of me and the money with today's newspaper. Is that how? Did you guys maybe read about a different negotiation thing? Yet.
All right, so meanwhile, along comes Hank Rogers. Now, after an unsuccessful attempt to wrangle the handheld rights from Stein, he says, fuck it, I bet they never thought to specify handheld rights in the contract at all, so he just goes to Moscow. He doesn't call anybody, he doesn't set up any appointments, doesn't even know where the fuck he's going. He gets a super shady passport, and in fact, the only way he even manages to figure out who he should be talking to at all is by visiting Moscovian Go clubs. So he guessed that since that game was so popular with mathematicians and shit, it would be the best way to meet computer programmers.
Just kicks open the door. What up, nerds? Nice rock game. Anyone here know where I can buy the rights to fucking shapes?
So by now, the rights to Tetris are being handled by Elorg.
Elorg, the company who dares to ask, who rang?
Right? Yes. Yeah, I think about that every time I hear it. So Elorg is the state-owned monopoly that's in charge of exporting computer software, which means they set up this entire fucking thing to sell Tetris because it's the only goddamn software they're exporting. So Rogers shows up one day and he's like, hey, I'm with Nintendo. I want to give you a shit ton of money. So they let him in. Now, he talks with a dude named Nikolai Belikov, and I love this fucking guy. Now, Belikov doesn't know a hell of a lot about negotiating business deals, but he does know that 2 potential buyers is better than 1. So he hears Rogers out. Now, ultimately, they reach an informal agreement on the handheld rights.
Yeah, Hank just slides a Rolling Stones LP across the table face down, and Nikolai nods.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, can you just fax this informal agreement to me so I feel more secure about the whole thing? You know?
I want to be tied with the other guy. Yeah, right. Okay, so now the meeting is between Rogers and Belikov, but they've got Alexei Pajitnov in the room in case there are any technical questions about the program itself. And even though he's not directly involved in the negotiations, Hank Rogers is a computer programmer, and he wants to impress on this other computer programmer that, hey, man, I'm going to do a good job translating your game. So he busts out the cartridge version of the game that his company already has that they're selling in Japan. Now, keep in mind that somewhere down that chain of rights, Tension subleased his company the console rights in Japan. Except nobody had the console rights in Japan to sell him. And that was how Elorg first learned that the game was even available on consoles. See, they knew that Stein was shopping the rights, but they'd only granted him computer rights, not console rights.
Oh, my fucking God. Now I miss the Etruscans. That's how bad this has gotten deep.
I'm going to make you regret saying the whole point of this essay was to make you say that. So ever the opportunist, Hank Rogers is like, hey, man, if those console rights are still available, I know a guy who will take them off your hand. And he immediately calls up his contacts with Nintendo of America. And so as soon as Minoru Arakawa learns that the rights to the most popular game in the fucking world are up for grabs, he and Howard Lincoln, that's NOA's chairman, hop a flight to Moscow. Or actually, it's nowhere near that easy. They hop a flight to D.C. to jump through the 2,700 hoops that it takes for a foreign-owned American company to go do a business deal with the Soviet government in the 80s.
And a bunch of those D.C. people were convinced they're spies.
Right, yeah.
But it's in the room, it's these Nintendo nerds just being like, dun, 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 dun. It's video games. We're like the Mario guys. What do you think? Yeah, I can show you how to set up a VCR, but that's nothing. Like, that's different.
All right, now, so I should point out that there's a kind of personal angle to all of this. Now, I know that multi-million-dollar business deals don't happen because of petty personal grudges, except, yes, the fuck they do. And the company most heavily invested in Tetris at this point was Atari's subsidiary, Tension. Now, that's a company that had been suing Nintendo since it was conceived for being more successful than them. So everybody involved in Nintendo was super stoked about a chance to pull the rug out from under Tension. So anyway, after a couple of spoiled-ass uber-rich American business elites acclimate to hotel in a USSR on the verge of full economic collapse for a night, Arakawa shows up at Elorg, and they set about their negotiations with Belikov. Now, Arakawa senses right away that Belikov is worried about money, so he's like, here, man, have $500,000. Now let's make a deal, huh? Like, before they can sign on the dotted line or whatever, they have to make sure they're buttoned down from a legal perspective. They know that if they snag these rights, they're going to get sued by pretty much every video game company on Earth simultaneously.
Yeah, that entire fax correspondence has to be very well buttoned down.
Exactly. Right. So now this is where Belikov reveals himself to be a bit of a shrewd negotiator. So he's already agreed to a contract in principle with Stein, but they haven't signed anything yet. So he sends out a revised copy along with a tirade about how he needs to start seeing some goddamn money. Now, the contract was rewritten in a couple of places. Mostly they were small changes that just clarified definitions and shit, but the sections on payment were substantially rewritten such that Elorg could recover penalties for late payments and shit like that. So Stein looks it over. He rolls his eyes at the late payment shit. And he says, okay, I'll agree to this.
Yeah, and then he takes the signed contracts, taps them on the table together, and then they line up perfectly and disappear just right out of his hands.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really difficult working with these motherfuckers. Now, since these guys had done nothing but bitch about late payments since Stein met him, he's certain that the entire point of the rewritten contract was the late payments thing. But hidden among the other changes were some brand new hyper-specific definitions of what a computer was. See, until now, Stein was operating under the assumption that a game console is effectively a computer, which was the justification that he'd been using to sell those rights. But in this new version of the contract, it specified that a computer meant a machine with a screen and a keyboard. So with Stein's name on that dotted line, Elorg was free to sell the console rights to Nintendo along with the handheld rights. So in March of 1989, about a month before the Game Boy is set to be released in the US, Nintendo sends this gleeful cease and desist to Atari, telling them to stop making Tetris and withdraw all the cartridges they already had in circulation. So naturally, Atari calls their way up the chain of rights until they get to Mirrorsoft, and Mirrorsoft is owned by this dude named Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell does not fuck around. Okay, Maxwell was born into an Orthodox Jewish family in Czechoslovakia. He was coming to age just as Hitler was coming to power. He escaped to England, joined the army, got a bunch of medals for killing Nazis, and then he set himself up as a media mogul in the UK. And that worked out well for him until the British government suspected him of being an Israeli spy, which is not the kind of guy you want lording over a giant media empire in your country. He would fall off his yacht shortly after.
Fall off his yacht, in quote. He walked into a polonium door.
Exactly, yeah. Took a bath.
Totally an Israeli spy, by the way.
But yeah, allegedly. But see, I saved it right there. But at this point, though, he's just a super rich, super litigious publishing magnate who happens to own a software company called Microsoft, along with a billion other companies. But this particular company is run by his son. So he is super inclined to not let that one get fucked over by Nintendo. So he starts calling in international contacts about this, including a private conversation about Tetris with Gorbachev.
This is what?
Yeah.
What is happening?
Despite a fuck ton of political pressure, Belikov sticks to his guns and manages to defend his deal with Nintendo.
Yeah, a few years earlier, Reagan would say, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And the crowd would have to wait for him to get that L piece perfectly lined up for it to come down.
You have to spin it. I know, Siberia. Yes, I know. But you have to spin it.
All right, so numerous lawsuits followed, but ultimately the deals Belikov made with Nintendo and Stein stuck. Nintendo went on to sell over 100 million Game Boys with Tetris as the pack-in game. Rogers would make millions on the deal just for acting as a go-between. But one dude that wouldn't make a goddamn penny was Alexei Pajitnov. In fact, as his game went on to become the most popular video game ever made, all he got out of the deal was an advanced release Game Boy for his kids and the lifelong friend that he ended up finding in Hank Rogers.
Really? I feel like that friendship would have been kind of strained.
Right?
And so I said to him, look, I could get a second yacht for those kind of prices. There has to be something you can do for me. You know what? Boom. Gives me the boat for asking price right then and there.
Hilarious.
Right? Hey, how you doing, man?
My wife make very good potato soup. It's good.
Oh.
It's
Potato soup, that does sound good.
good. It's good. It's cold potato soup. Vichy swat. It's called.
Eat it on my boat.
No.
All right, so now for years, this story just had that sad fucking ending. And in interviews, Pajitnov, bless his little heart, he would try to put a brave face on it. He'd go out there and he'd be like, well, I never cared about making money. My goal was only to make people happy, and I have succeeded.
The citation needed story right there.
Exactly. But eventually, he used the clout he had as the Tetris designer to immigrate to the United States and take a job as a game designer in Washington. And eventually, his buddy Hank Rogers helped him set up the Tetris Company, which was ultimately able to buy back virtually all the rights to the game. And belatedly, the game finally made Pajitnov a millionaire.
See, now that's the friendship I'm talking about.
Alexei, hey, man, how's that wife of yours?
No idea. I leave her for a much younger woman, so she good.
Yeah, okay. All right. How's the soup?
Yeah, this one don't make
Fuck
soup.
that soup. Fuck that soup.
All right, so now Tetris has a ton of records in the video game industry. Like I said, it's hard to say which game is like the most played, and how do you compare a game that most people play for 15 minutes at a stretch to the kind of games that you play for hours at a time. But I think the most significant record that Tetris holds, and indeed the most significant record that any video game could hold, is that it has been translated to more platforms by far than any other game. But for some cosmetic changes, it remains virtually the same exact game that Pajitnov created in 1984, and where virtually every other game of its day is dated and really only fun if it comes with nostalgia. Tetris is still winning new addicts 3.5 decades later.
And if you had to summarize what you learned in one sentence, what would it be?
Tom wishes I would talk about the Etruscans more.
Yeah, you know.
We all heard him say it.
And are you ready for the quiz?
I mean, I could wait for a better piece, but it's right. I mean, eventually I'm going to have to put something there. So yeah, we'll go ahead now. We'll do it.
All right, you got a tall piece. I'll go first. Great, you're ready. Okay, so how did Robert Maxwell really die? A, green shell. Shell, weapon. B, Really long fire stick that moves like the hand of a clock. C, spy hunter. Or that's the name of a game. Thank you. D, he's actually still alive. When he fell off that yacht, he got fished out by Lakitu.
Oh, right on. And then put back on the track. Okay,
That's another Nintendo reference.
Yeah, no, so I can't imagine him going out from a green shell. It would be red at least. Okay, no, you know what? Secret answer E. He decided he'd rather stop playing altogether than go through another fucking water level.
That is correct. Absolutely. Also, blue shells are bullshit.
Yeah.
All right, Noah. If you beat Tetris on the Game Boy, a bunch of Russians dance comically about the screen, and then what looks very much like an American space shuttle takes off in celebration. Why? A, something had to happen. B, oh, I'm sorry, how did you want the story to end?
All right, actually, secret answer C. That's actually the Buran, Buran, I think. It's a Soviet shuttle that had one uncrewed flight in 1988 and then got destroyed in 2002 when its hangar collapsed. It's such a Russian story.
That's so great. I'm making a note.
NASA just shot a really long piece next to it.
Yeah, right.
Ah.
Okay, no, one more question. What's the second best known game developed in Russia? A, Tsar Bomberman. C, Cold War EO World. C, USSR type.
Nice.
Or D, Comrade Racer.
All right. You know what?
was awesome.
I'm not sure if I'm correct, but I'm so excited to have been present for the 21st century's first Rad Racer reference. I'm going to go with D. I'll go with D one way or the other.
You are correct, Noah. It is D.
All right, go me.
All right, nobody stumped Noah, so you are this week's winner.
All right, well, you know, the key to my heart is references to obscure Nintendo games from 1987, so we're going to go with Cecil.
All right.
All right. Well, for Tom, Noah, Cecil, and Heath, I'm Eli Bosnick. Thanking you for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week. And by then, Cecil will be an expert on something else. Between now and then, Heath will be playing Smash Brothers against himself. Cecil will be the last human playing EverQuest. Noah will be doing the non-porn stuff that's allowed in virtual reality. And I'll be playing Don't Let Your Baby Die for the all work and no PlayStation. And if you'd like to help keep this show going, you can make a per episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod or leave us a 5-star review everywhere you can. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, check out past episodes, connect with us on social media, or check the show notes, be sure to check out citationpod.com. And remember, I didn't forget Tom. He doesn't play video games.
Dude, I can't believe she gave you her number.
What can I say? You want a little bit of the long piece, right? Right?
man.
Right?
Long piece.
Channel my name.
Long piece.
Guys,
I'm the
sorry.
long piece.
It's almost 9:30.
Oh, you're
Any
still here?
chance you fellas are ready to call it a night? I still have some papers to grade.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah. I got a paper you can grade.
Long piece.
Long piece. Long piece.
Long piece. Long piece. Long piece.
Long piece.
Doesn't
You
work.
can't join it.
When
Go
you
home.
just stop.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/get started. That's GREENLIGHT.com/get started.